Today we're going to do a little bit of stuff with Illustrator, just a quick intro to it, and we're going to look at how to use a classic motion tween and use classic motion tween for a motion guide. So on our site there's two mazes here, and originally I had planned to do this during the week of Halloween, but we just didn't have enough time. And these two mazes here we're going to download. Now Illustrator, this is the icon for it. Now it is similar to Photoshop. In Photoshop we are dealing with images, and in Illustrator we're dealing with graphics. So what's the difference? Well, in Photoshop those images are most commonly photos, and what you're doing with those photos, and you're editing them, and the file size and the quality and all that stuff is a factor. And in Illustrator, you're working with something called vector graphics. So in vector graphics, it's scalable. So scalable means, like, if I wanted it to be the size of a postage stamp or the size of something to go on a billboard, I would just create one graphic and then I would scale it smaller or larger, and it would always look the same. If you're making something in Photoshop and you're working with a little thumbnail, like sometimes I'll have students download something from the internet and they will download like a thumbnail sized image, and then when they stretch it into the background for their animation, it gets all like pixelated, like all looks like little squares. I'll put up a picture of pixelation and the difference between all that. I can't remember if I did that earlier in the course, but I've posted this picture several times, and the main difference is you kind of lose that quality. So even though a thumbnail is a low file size, small file size, the quality of it gets distorted as you expand it. So with vector graphics you can make things smaller, larger, etc. And the file extension for Illustrator is .ai. And once you have stuff in Illustrator, you can save it as or export it as a JPEG or a PNG or a variety of things. In our case, we're going to download these Illustrator files. We're going to open them up in Illustrator, just take a look at what it looks like, and then we're going to import it into Animate. So I'm just going to open up Illustrator, and we're going to do that by, I'm actually going to pin this to my taskbar just because we're going to use it for the rest of the course. And then I'm going to launch it here. I'm going to pause the video while it launches because it takes a couple minutes here. Okay, so once we launch Illustrator, one thing I'll point out is sometimes students will, and even I get in the habit of, I'll find a file, an Animate file or Illustrator file, and then I'll open up that file and I'll double click on it, and then it usually launches the program. Now with Illustrator, what I find especially is if you find that file and then you double click on it, sometimes it won't launch the program. It'll say like error, and then someone will think that there's something wrong with that file, or it's corrupted, or it won't work anymore. But in Illustrator specifically, I've noticed this, you have to go open the program, then go open, and then find your file, and then open it from the program. So this will launch here, and what's great about Adobe programs is the same company makes these programs that we're using, so they make sure that everything kind of looks familiar. So even though you haven't used this before, we can look over here and it says layers. So we know from our Animate program like what layers are. We've got a very similar toolbar here, tool set. Up here we can see like there is a fill, there's a stroke, we can change the size of the stroke, we got our document set up, all that stuff. So this is a maze. So with this one, I just wanted to show you that in this program we can create some drawings. We got more options in this than we do in Animate. to create some like characters, and then we can import them into Animate. So we're going to go to Animate, and we're going to start with just width 800, height 400, frame rate 24, action script 3.0. Click Create. Now, before we import the maze, I'm just going to create something very quickly. So we'll go to the oval tool, go to our properties, turn the drawing mode on. I want to make a gradient, do like a radial gradient, and here, and okay, so I'm just going to make this I'm going to use our gradient transform like we did the other day, and I'm going to make that glare off there. So it gives us a little more depth here. Actually, I don't like this stroke on here. I'm going to take that off. Okay, so I want to make this move. So recap, F8. I'm just going to call this a blue ball. Change the name of the layer. So normally what we would do is we would go to a frame, press F5, and then we would right click, create a motion tween, make the ball move across the stage. In this case, we're going to say we want the ball starting maybe off the stage, and then we want the ball moving over here. So in 4 seconds, so I'm going to press F6 to put in a keyframe over here. So another option is to right click anywhere in between those two keyframes and go create classic tween. So instead of creating a motion tween as we have in the past, this is another way to do a very similar thing. So we've got our blue ball, and I guess I moved it. So we'll start it over here. So we want it to move across the screen. So we put in this classic tween, and it's doing basically the same thing as what we did when, if I right click, remove the classic tween, right click, create a motion tween. So we've got this option here. So very similar. Here's where we were able to like bend the curve of that line, or that motion guide. So the problem became when we decided we wanted the ball to maybe move in like a specific way. So if we want the ball to move a specific way, and we say, well, maybe we'll have the ball move down here. Oh, now I want the ball to move up. Now I want it to move down. Okay, this isn't working the same way because this is this curve. So I don't want it to be curved. I want it to move a little more straight. So I'm going to right click, remove this motion tween. I'm going to put this classic tween back in here. Okay, and here we go. Instead, now I'm going to right click. I'm just going to go undo. I'm going to remove the classic tween. Right here, I'm going to start with F6, move the ball here. F6, move the ball here. F6, move the ball here. So I could right click in here and add these classic tweens. So we could still do this with the motion tween. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, and obviously the space between these keyframes and the distance will affect how fast it appears to be going. Now I'm going to add a layer here. I'm going to highlight all this and just clear these keyframes. I'm actually going to remove this classic tween for a second. I'm going to take my pen tool, and what I'm going to do with this on this layer, I'm going to lock my ball just in case. I'm going to make this okay. So I've got this moving. Yeah. So I've got this here. So this is my path that I want the ball to follow. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to change this to a guide layer. So I'm going to right click and go guide. Or we could add a classic motion guide here. So I've already got the ball and I've got this path here. So I've lined this up. I'm just going to undo. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go guide. So this is a guide layer. So when we go Control Enter, we can't see it. When it's not a guide layer, we can see that path in there. I'm going to try and speed this up here because I'm running out of time on my video. But I'm going to right click, make this a guide. I'm going to drag the ball underneath, and now it's a classic motion guide. So I'm going to undo. I'm going to grab the ball. I'm going to move it here. It'll kind of like snap to the end of this. And then at 4 seconds, I'm going to press F6. And I'm going to take that ball and I'm going to go and put it at the end. So it kind of like snaps to the end of this guide. And then I right click in here and I go create a classic tween. And then I've got my ball following that motion path. So what I want you to do for this next assignment is you're going to take both of those mazes. You're going to put one in scene 1. You're going to put the other in scene 2. So how do you do that? Quickly, I'll see if I can finish this before the video cuts out. In scene, create new scene, file, import to the library. I'm going to add that maze. I think this video is going to cut off right away. How much time do I got? I don't know why that paused, so I don't know what was cut out. But so I'm importing this maze. So I just go File, Import to the library. Don't worry about this. Just leave it as the default. Go to your library. You've got your maze. You've got your layer that you're going to make a maze, and then you just drag this out. Change the size of it. Alright, so you're going to make your ball go through the maze. So maze 1, pop out the other end, and then you're going to do the same thing with another scene you're going to add for scene 2. And yeah, you're going to use the classic motion tween, just like we did in this example here. I'm out of time, so that's it for this one.